Welcome, buckle up, as I explore the journey of the mighty, passionate, feisty Mars through the quick-moving sign of everyday communication Gemini from the 20th of July for over 6 weeks through to the 4th of September. But as this event manifests, so Mars is forging an enabling angle to Pluto, the planet of transformation, in the sign of Aquarius. And across these two signs, this is the first time this particular relationship has occurred for over 220 years. But also the Sun, as it comes to the end of its journey through Cancer, is forging an electric angle to Uranus, the planet of change, but also is in a sextile to the Sun. But as the Sun moves in, it does go into an opposition. This could be one of the most potent times in the history of us all. I'm astrologer Patrick Arundell. Thank you for joining me. If you're new to my channel, this is very much a community. Please share any thoughts you have. If you're a returning visitor, all your views and interactions are truly appreciated. If you've yet to subscribe to my channel, please help it thrive by clicking that sub button, but also the bell notification symbol. If you'd like to have a one-to-one with me, as a consultant astrologer, that's the main part of my work. Please check out my testimonials below. If you'd like to get your free daily written horoscope fired to your device each morning, please see the subscription link below. If you're a patron, thank you so much for your support. You can become one from $3 a month. I will upload a factoid for this event for my patrons. But also, if you'd like to ascend above zodiac astrology and understand the power of your own personal birth data, if you give me 3 pieces of information of time, date and place of birth, or date and place, I can produce for you your life roadmap report, which will give you searing insights to the patterns that are played out in your life so far, but also help you to work with those energies future forwards. And for 30% off, you can also get your 12 months transits, your forecast, which is based on your unique birth data, totally individual to you. Please see below for more. If you know your tropical astrology, why not check out my draconic version, your soul or karmic chart. You can see the link for that below too. So Mars moves into the sign of Gemini on the 20th of July at 8:43 p.m. Universal. Now, across those 47 days, Mars is going to forge some mighty influences, not just at the outset, but I am going to share with you the event chart from a solar perspective that we can all relate to. But Mars is going to clash with Saturn, and then it's going to clash with Neptune. So please stay with me as I unpack that. But then I will go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces to give you a flavour of what you can expect. But Mars in Gemini, let's just think of the archetype of Gemini. Of course, it's the 3rd zodiac sign. It's ruled by Mercury. It's very much about quick, fast communications. It's nimble, and Mars can be very passionate here. A lot of sports people have Mars in Gemini because of the quick thrust-in movement of the combination of Mars and this sign. It's also a great time for us all to try to increase the amount of exercise we get. But equally, a lot of journalists have Mars in Gemini or Mars in the 3rd house because it's very much about expressing opinions in a very powerful and potent way. Now, often people with Mars in Gemini, so quick on the uptake, it's very, very hard to have a discussion that you might not end up on the losing side because they can be very forceful in their communications. And that's one of the potential challenges to this next 6-week period, that people are going to become even more polarized in terms of the opinions they have, even more provocative, quarrelsome, and rather intolerant. But what about those two incredible angles? First up, Mars to Pluto. When we have those two collaborating, it gives us an incredible amount of willpower. So if there is something in terms of your future plan the sign of Aquarius is very much about our future, but also our connection to others. Or if we're really driven by our idealism, the energy that we're going to have to pour into that project, plan, or relationship is going to be absolutely incredible. So that can improve people's stamina and give them a lot of extra drive. But what about the sextile that's developing to the Sun? Well, that can also increase energy, not least because the Sun will, from the 22nd, return home to Leo, the sign it rules. So that willpower that comes from Mars and Pluto is strengthened even more with this combination, and our reflexes can be very, very quick as well. And as I mentioned, if you do want to get a lot more active, that's a marvellous opportunity to do so. Now, in terms of the event chart, which I'm sharing on the screen now, I have done this from a solar perspective, so we can see that Mars is in house 3, everyday ideas, and Pluto in the 11th house. So I think there's going to be a lot of conversation about what we want from our future collectively. But you can see that Uranus, as I mentioned before, is in the sign of Taurus, forging that splendid link with the Sun, but a much more challenging one to the ruler of the sign of Gemini, Mercury. It is a bit broad, but it is there. Now that could make us very impulsive. Uranus in the second house can be very much to do with our attitude to money, possessions, land, food, what we're attached to or invested in. And of course, Mercury in Leo is a very proud position for Mercury to be in. So if we are tempted to do something very quick, which Mars in Gemini can perhaps give us the nudge to do, particularly with our resources, just be aware that over the entirety of this 6 weeks, that particular aspect could see us being a little bit scattered and maybe being a bit impulsive in terms of any kind of investment, or perhaps having a flutter, because the 5th house, where Mercury is along with Venus, very much the sector of chance and speculation. But the angle between Uranus and the Sun is much more constructive. That's essentially saying that if we can take some fresh approaches to where we live and how we live there, that's a very good thing. But the essential thing here is that although Mars and Pluto link so incredibly powerfully, they're in air signs. So ideologies are going to be expressed in a very powerful way. And once the Sun moves into Leo and goes opposite Pluto exactly, it is there on this event, just in another disassociate way, what we're going to see is some people using the energy of Leo for their own personal grandification, whereas the position of Pluto in Aquarius is much more about how we're all collectively affected. And what you get with the Sun opposite Pluto is people with very trenchant opinions, very dogmatic, very, very forceful, and not prepared to bend. So as much as Mars moving into the agile sign of Gemini would, on the face of it, suggest that there's loads of opportunities for happy meetups, mixing and mingling, lots of quick flirting, maybe even some passionate embraces along the way, I feel the big picture is a lot more intensity and potentially a lot more polarization. But what about the upcoming events that I mentioned? From the 12th to the 19th of August, that is really quite complex because it's exact on the 16th of August, but Mars and Saturn lock into a 90-degree angle, which can create a lot of restriction. But of course, what we're also going to see is, because Saturn's in Pisces, in its sign of culmination, it may be that stuff that's been hidden away will come into the open that will create even more intense discussion. Also, from the 28th of August through to the 4th of September, we have a square between Mars and Neptune. Now, that's the trickster influence bar none. So we need to be very, very mindful of what we're told, what we read, because distortion can be the order of the day, and some downright thievery and trickery. So just watch out for that one, because remember Mars, let's think about the archetype. Mars is about instant gratification, it's about action, it's about getting on the front foot, initiation, it's about what we want to achieve around our egos. but our egos can be very attached to our beliefs through this particular transit. Also, if we have fractious relationships with siblings, third house, neighbours, third house, that energy can be amplified. And of course, Mars can be very impatient and very reactive. So we just need to be aware that as much as it can give us a big push, all of us, to get much more on the move, interact much more, be more physically fitter, there is going to be some potential challenges and downsides. Please stay with me as I go through each of the 12 signs from Aries through to Pisces. Aries, you can turn this transit very much to your advantage, particularly if you do feel that your life has become a little stale. The sign of Gemini is very much about ideas, but quick exchanges of ideas. But if you are up to learning some new skills, sharing some of those you have, perhaps signing up for some online courses, third house very much in keeping with the modern technological age we live in. But also Mars in this area could give you an incentive to join in more with community activities and events, perhaps enjoying them, or perhaps as a volunteer helping other people. If you have thought about a new mode of transport, that could be something that tempts you, but don't be surprised. Don't be surprised if it was a new bicycle, very much the third house, electric scooter, electric bike, or you do decide to leap off the settee and decide to give yourself a much more vigorous fitness plan. But also the link between Mars, which of course is your ruler, and the position of Pluto gives you a lot of incentive to really grapple with what you want from your long term. And if you have been feeling that your friendship circle, for example, has become a little stale, this is a great chance to try to rejuvenate things, particularly with the Sun about to move into your fellow fire sign of Leo, which is one of the best periods of the whole year for you. That's going to give you 3 assets in the part of your chart to do with self-expression: the Sun, Venus and Mercury. You've seen from the solar event chart that it is important to be mindful of not being too free and easy with resources. But for you personally, I feel that your physical vitality is going to lift a lot. Just don't rush around anywhere, Aries, because you could get some knocks. The third house is very much to do with when we're less conscious emotionally, moving rapidly, and a lack of concentration could cause a little bit of mischief. So Taurus with Mars hustling and bustling out of your sign into Aries, think of the things you've been working on over the last 6 weeks. If you have been trying to initiate something new, investing in fresh ideas, putting in a lot of application, you won't necessarily have got the results yet, but you could get the results over the next 6 weeks if you're persistent. But also, Mars moving into your second house in the thinking sign of Gemini also asks you to perhaps check out the ways in which you can earn money or improve your income if you've yet to do so. So downloading some information can unlock a lot of opportunities, particularly with Pluto in a very dominant part of the relationship, really urging you to think big. It's just the Sun is asking you to be mindful of what you need emotionally, and finding a balance between the two is important. So as much as you could set your sights high, I think it's also very key to be as realistic as possible. But that's where your earthy nature can be such an asset to you. It helps you to just have really reasonable expectations. But if you really want to put in extra effort, you can manifest an improvement in your finances. And of course, the second house can be an area where we really enjoy good food and good wine. But this transit may make it a little bit more difficult sticking to a current diet plan. So Gemini, the best part of Mars arriving in your sign is some of the frustrations of the last 6 weeks can start to fizzle away. Now, that's because Mars, when it moves through the 12th solar house, can create a lot of complex reactions. One of these can be that energies that have lain dormant within us for a very long time can be reactivated. Sometimes past memories, hurts, disappointments and rejections that we thought we dealt with, but somehow are still lingering in our subconscious, which rules the 12th house. Also, of course, Mars in the 12th house can be about those proverbial secret enemies. So Mars moving into your own sign is going to immediately strengthen your physical vitality. You're going to be much more on the front foot. The link with Pluto, which is very much to do with expansion and new knowledge, is sensational. And because you've got the Sun about to move into your 3rd house, which is very much in keeping with the energies of your sign, you're going to really spark back into life in quite a major way. But of course, along the way of this particular transit, we are going to see that square with Saturn and then with Neptune. And for you, both those planets are manifesting in your sector of worldly interactions. So I feel that you may encounter, if you start something new or fresh, you may encounter some, not necessarily opposition, but restraining influences across those squares, perhaps in some ways asking you to modify the thing that you're really invested in a way which fits the expectation of the boss or the company or the client that you're trying to work with in terms of your professional situation. But I feel physically you're really going to come back into form, and if you have been feeling unwell, perhaps even with Mars in the 12th house, have had some kind of accident or inflammatory issue going on, now's a great opportunity to really feel that you're back in the moment and showing people just how dynamic and driven you can be. So Cancer, let's think about the opportunities of Mars moving into house 12. Over the next 6 weeks, there could be a reconnection with someone from your past. This may be a professional connection, to be honest. It may be someone who was quite assertive or influential, but it can work out well if you reconnect both with shared experiences and greater knowledge, and there could be an opportunity to work together again. But Mars moving into the 12th house does have a tendency to drag up from the surface, to the surface, from the depths of our being, some issues that we thought were well and truly dealt with. And that can be to do with past trauma, to be honest, whether it's the traffic accident we had, or the mean boss, or the relationship breakup. These are the type of things that, however much we feel that we've worked on them, somehow or another, our subconscious does have some kind of lasting memory. But also, what Mars can help you to do over the next 6 weeks is work on embracing your approach to interactions with others that may be a bit more feisty. Because one of the things with being a Cancerian is you can sometimes dislike confrontation to such a degree that you remove yourself from situations. And although that is a way of protecting yourself, it's not always the most constructive way to deal with disputes. Sometimes it's better to actually meet people in the middle and have a frank discussion, even if that can feel a little bit risky. And remember, on this event, and Uranus still ongoing in the sign of Taurus is forging a fabulous link with the Sun in your sign. That's asking you to stay very open-minded in your approach. But when it comes to Mars moving through the 12th house, just be aware there may be times when your emotions can become much rawer, much edgier. Sometimes we can find ourselves with Mars in the 12th house becoming very tearful. It doesn't always have to be the more negative side of Mars that we all feel is there. And just be aware that when the square does start to build up from the 12th to the 19th of August, with Saturn, there may be something that's rather tender from your past that could be teasing into your mind. Perhaps there's going to be a revelation or some kind of challenge around a historical part of your history. And it could be that someone is going to bring up something that's rather tender as far as you're concerned, and may be determined to have their say, because of course Mars in Gemini very much about communication. So there could be some challenges with this transit for you, but also definitely some opportunities. And also remember that with Mars linking so brilliantly to Pluto, if you have got old skills and experiences that could be remodeled in some kind of new and fresh way, that could be very good for you from a long-term financial viewpoint. Welcome, Leo. So over the last 6 weeks, you've had a brilliant opportunity to raise your profile, be very dynamic about what you want in terms of your professional interactions. If you tried some novel approaches, been a bit more daring, they may have paid off well for you. But the next 6 weeks is going to be much more social. Mars is the planet of ego, but in the 11th house, with the host Gemini being very much about communication, you're going to find that your desire to network is really going to increase quite substantially. And there could be one group of people or one particular friend that you really forge a very tight bond with over this period of time. The 11th house can also be about our future, but the key with Mars in the 11th house is not quite so much about us. We're prepared to use our energy perhaps to help others. So whether it's as someone who assists people in a local community situation, sports team, encouraging other kids if you've got children, getting a bit of a team spirit ethic going, you're going to be really a star turn in that regard. But what about the arrival of the sun in your sign on the 22nd? Well, it's linked to Mars. It is terrific. So you're going to just feel so much more energized. And whereas there has been Mars in that very prominent position, you still have had the sun and those 2 full moons in very complex areas. So I feel that you're going to come into your own a lot more. I feel that you're going to be much more self-assured, and the chance to socialize is going to be something that you can seize. What about the opposition between the sun and Pluto? Well, if you do want something completely different from someone you're involved with romantically, this could be a telling juncture, because the 11th house is about those future hopes. It's also about our highest principles. It goes beyond the physical realm of success around money, goals and ambitions, property and cars. It's much more about what really gives us a sense of meaning to our lives. So if you're in a relationship which doesn't have that meaning but also has a lot of clashes, it's not easy for either side to particularly give way. That kind of energy may show itself quite soon. Now, with the squares that are coming up with Saturn and Neptune later in August and the start of September, your future plans have to be grounded in reality when it comes to finance. So if you are trying to do something that is a little bit different and innovative, which could be the case with Mars in the 11th house, it also needs to work when you add the numbers up. So Virgo, for some time the planets have been pushing you in a very provocative way to be very open to new approaches. And that could have been through higher education or some professional training. You may have travelled more, but you know, the focus now switches much more to your professional sphere. And if that's the area that has felt a little dull, restrictive and limiting, don't be surprised if you reset your goals and ambitions over the next 6 weeks. And if you do, it may be that something you've been invested in for a very long time is going to come to an end, perhaps in the middle of August, perhaps by the start of September. As I'm telling you this, you may be thinking, I just don't see this happening, because you have such an appreciation of stability. But don't underestimate your skills and talents. And if you don't feel heard, seen or recognized, acknowledged or celebrated as much as you could, the next 6 weeks gives you an awesome opportunity to raise your profile and strike out in a way which does attract a lot more attention in your direction. And it could see you unlock a golden opportunity when it comes to your work. So Libra, I think it's fair to say that things have been quite intense of late. The culmination of Mars in the conjunction with Uranus may have seen you dealing with a situation which did demand some kind of change, whether you were reluctant to make that change or not. It could have even seen a dynamic connection. Maybe you found someone very alluring and very irresistible, or you may have wanted to break away from something that you had been very invested in. Perhaps even a financial relationship or a business alliance. And because Mars is moving into house 9, your freedom is something you're going to be taking much more seriously over the next 6 weeks. And that personal freedom could be a desire to be more independent, adventurous and travel, or it could be to gain even more information to guide your future. But the fact that the position of Mars forges such an amazing link to Pluto suggests that if you do feel that you've really been hemmed in and you just got to be true to yourself, then this is a fabulous opportunity to spark that. And with the Sun about to move into the part of your situation, very much to do with your friendships and long-term future, if you're planning a trip with a group or go away with one special friend, or you decide to break free of a relationship or a job or a life pattern that's really in some ways been draining you and has been very compulsive, but you just feel that you have to have that fresh air, moving into your sister air sign of Gemini, as Mars does, is a wonderful opportunity to give yourself the permission to really seek out pastures new. So Scorpio, for you, Mars is your traditional ruler. It's had that massive connection with Uranus in your 7th house of relating. What was the outcome of that? It's either going to be to invest deeper and more intimately, or it could be that you're thinking about where you may want to evolve and transform a part of your life. And because Mars is linking with your other ruler, Pluto, in the part of your situation to do with home and the family, if you did think about a property matter or a renovation or an investment that may be to do with bricks and mortar, wouldn't be a complete surprise at this time. And the Sun is about to make its way into the most visible part of your situation. So if you are wanting to take your business ideas much more seriously, this is a great juncture for you. It's just finding that balance, because the Sun is definitely going to see you wanted to seek out greater recognition. So if you are very entrepreneurial, but it does mean that you've got to invest some money, plan a situation that won't necessarily give you an instant return, you will need the support of those closest to you. And if that support is not forthcoming, that could create some tension. And of course, Mars opposite Uranus may have seen some kind of spark around your romantic situation. If it's gone beyond that initial sizzling attraction and you're still wanting to get to know each other better, things can get deeper and much more intense from here on in. So Sagittarius, for you, as Mars and Uranus culminated in the conjunction, it may have created a lot of tension and a lot of brittleness, perhaps some irritability. Little details may have really aggravated you. But Mars moving into the 7th house asks you to think about how you relate. And because it forges such a potent link to Pluto, the force of your ideas and your persuasiveness, you can often be someone who has great enthusiasm, and you could find that if you are trying to sell or promote something, people can be all ears. But with the Sun in an opposition with Pluto, there is a bit of a thin line between evoking the upside of a situation and people feeling that maybe you're being a little bit too over assertive. So the 7th house position for Mars is great if we want to set our boundaries. If there has been a situation where you feel you've been doing a lot more for other people and they're not taking enough responsibility, perhaps domestically, perhaps at work, this is an opportunity to recast and be firmer on what you will and won't accept. But equally, if you'd like to meet somebody romantically, the next 6 weeks could see you much more proactive and busy and just up much more for the potential for a connection. So Capricorn, the chances are that life's been quite exciting recently, but perhaps also a little unpredictable. If you're someone who takes comfort from steady routines, Mars moving into the 6th house can be very reassuring. It's also going to give you extra physical vitality. And as much as the playfulness or the creativity you've been enjoying has had its upside, just getting things back into a format you feel comfortable about could be something that really appeals to you. For example, you might want to look at your finances in a very careful way over the next 6 weeks. If you can squeeze a bit more from your resources, the precision that comes with Mars in the 6th house will help. If you want to find a new job where you're helping others more, Mars in the 6th house tends to reduce our ego need, and it's much more about being of support. So if a service position came up, you'd be primed to go for it at the present time. What can be more challenging? Well, if there has been some kind of electric connection with someone romantically recently, I think you're now going to find out whether your values match and whether those small but important little details that can either mesh people together or put them at opposite ends of the settee, I think they're going to become much more obvious to you quite quickly. But one of the things that Mars can do is make you very virtuous about all sorts of things over the next 6 weeks. But in the middle of August, the end of the month and the start of September, don't give yourself a list as long as your arm. It's important to make some achievable targets and work on those as effectively as possible. So Aquarius, it's a really marvellous opportunity for you because Mars moves into your sister air sign of Gemini. It's quick, flirty, playful, can also give you a much needed boost in terms of your allure and attractiveness. Expect a lot of social interaction over the next 6 weeks. The link with Pluto, though, suggests if you've got an idea that you're really excited by, your drive and passion for this is going to be something that other people are going to become much more conscious of. But for once, because you're often someone who does work as part of a team or as very much an encourager, it's important to invest in your individuality. The 5th house is very Leonian. It's about showcasing your flair, artistry and talent. And the fact that the sun's just about to move into that area adds to the opportunity. If you would like to bring greater excitement to your social and romantic situations, you've got it all to go for over the next few weeks. What about the opposition between the Sun and Pluto? I think it's quite complex, to be honest. It's important to be a good listener. It's important to tune in to others, but it's not so good to deny our talents and our ego potential because we want to be a good egg. So finding a balance between what you need to do for you and also make sure that your friends are part of the story or you feel that you're being collaborative with your work, that's important. But it's also important to seize moments. This is such a rare timing. If there is something you feel really strongly about that you want to manifest, really turn up the afterburners because you deserve to draw that goodness to you after some quite tough years, particularly with Uranus going through 4 and Pluto through 12. So Pisces, you know the old saying, home is where our heart is. Mars moving into your home zone can quite literally see you much more active around your home, whether it is redecorating, whether it's retro refitting some part of your property, whether it's moving altogether if your immediate environment doesn't work for you. That's the action side of Mars. But also there's the emotional side. The 4th house can see Mars a bit prickly and defensive, but because of the link with the Sun, this is definitely an opportunity to get busy in terms of decluttering, reorganizing, making sure that your home is running as well as it possibly can in terms of the physicality. But if there are some things that around the emotional part of your life that have been unsaid, even with that conjunction that's just gone between Mars and Uranus, which may have meant some sparks flying with a sibling or a neighbour, I feel that you're going to want to be much more protective about your emotional world over this next 6 weeks. Now, of course, Mars is going to clash with Saturn in your sign mid-August and Neptune late August, early September. What does that mean? It means essentially that you need to find a balance between using the energy and the force of Mars in a way which fits what you need as an individual, because sometimes we can react to situations and it's not in our best interest. So if something does trigger you a little bit across those weeks, just be aware that it may be better to count to 10, even if someone's proven to be very exasperating. But if you have got a physical plan that you want to enact, you're actually moving altogether, relocating, building or renovating or do it yourself in, you're going to be absolutely on fire. It's been a real pleasure being with you. Thank you so much for joining me for this Mars special, going through Gemini. Have a great 6 weeks. Take care. All the best and goodbye.